In 1955, a 13-year-old in a small Ohio town sat down with a steel nib pen, a bottle of ink, and a single sheet of paper. No calculator, no spell check, no multiple choice. Just 20 questions standing between them and the 8th grade diploma that, for many families, marked the end of formal schooling. Here's the unsettling part. Hand that same exam to a room full of college graduates today, and most would fail. Question number 4 has left engineers staring at the ceiling, and number 1 is so simple. A 1955 farm kid could answer it half asleep, yet it leaves modern adults completely blank. These were not trick questions. This was just what an educated 8th grader was expected to know. Before we start, hit subscribe because you are going to want to test yourself against this. Let's count down. Number 20. Spell these words correctly. The exam opened the way every 1955 school day opened, with spelling. And the words on the list would humble most adults holding a smartphone. Rhythm, conscientious, parallel, embarrass, liquefy, supersede. No red squiggly line to warn you. No autocorrect to quietly fix your mistake. Just you, the paper, and everything your teacher had drilled into you since the 4th grade. Spelling was not a minor subject in 1955. It was a discipline, sharpened weekly at the front of the class in spelling bees that could stretch a Friday afternoon into a battle of nerves. Children stood in a long row, and one misplaced letter sent you back to your desk, cheeks burning. The correct answers, in case you are wondering, hinge on rules most people never learned. It is supersede, not supersede, the only common English word ending that way. It is liquefy, not liquefy. A modern adult, so used to a machine catching the slip, forgets these were once carried entirely in the head. Number 19, define the following words and use each in a sentence. Diligent, temperance, industrious, frugal. An 8th grader in 1955 could not simply recognize these words. They had to own them, define them cleanly, and put them to work in a sentence of their own making. Vocabulary was not tested by circling the closest guess. It was tested by production. You wrote the definition and then proved you understood it. Notice something about the words themselves. Diligent, temperance, industrious, frugal. These were not chosen at random. They were the virtues a mid-century schoolhouse was trying to grow in its children, threaded quietly into the coursework. A frugal person avoids waste. A temperate person practices moderation. Today, a college graduate might fumble the difference between temperance and tolerance, or stall trying to define industrious without simply saying hardworking. The 1955 student had a working vocabulary that a great many adults now reach for a search bar to recover. Number 18, copy the following passage in your best hand. Yes, penmanship was graded, and graded seriously. Students learned the Palmer method, an entire system of movement in which the letters flowed from the arm and shoulder rather than the cramped fingers. The paper was slanted just so. The loops were even. The pressure on the downstroke was firmer than the upstroke, and a teacher could tell at a glance whether a child had practiced. There was a rhythm to it, a soft scratch of nib across paper, filling the whole room, 30 children moving in near unison. Beautiful handwriting was considered a mark of character, a sign that a person could be careful, patient, and precise. Most adults today print in a rushed scrawl, and cursive has faded so far that many younger people cannot read it at all. Ask a modern professional to produce a full paragraph in flowing, legible longhand, and the result would earn a firm mark down from any teacher of 1955. Number 17, diagram this sentence, labeling every part of speech. Here is where the grammar got serious. Students were handed a sentence and asked to take it completely apart, building a Reed-Kellogg diagram, that spidery skeleton of horizontal and slanted lines that maps exactly how a sentence is built. Subject on one side, predicate on the other, split by a vertical line. Modifiers dangling below on their diagonal legs. Every single word had a job, and the student had to name it. Noun, verb, adjective, adverb, preposition, conjunction, and the trickier ones like the predicate, nominative, and the direct object. This was ordinary 8th grade work. Today, plenty of adults cannot reliably tell you the difference between an adjective and an adverb, let alone locate the direct object in a sentence they just read. Sentence diagramming has vanished so thoroughly from American classrooms that most people under 60 have never seen one. Yet in 1955, a 13-year-old was expected to build one from scratch, cleanly, in ink. Number 16. Give the principal parts of these verbs. Go, lie, lay, bring, choose. Every verb has principal parts, the present, the past, and the past participle, and a well-taught student rattled them off without hesitation. Go, went, gone, bring, brought, choose, chose, chosen. Then came the classic trap that still catches educated adults every day of the week: lie and lay. To lie down is lie, lay, lain. To lay something down is lay, laid, laid. Listen to how often people say, "I'm going to lay down now," and you will understand why a 1955 grammar teacher would have sighed. This was not pedantry to them, it was precision, the belief that a person who spoke carefully thought carefully. The correct forms were memorized, recited, and expected in every piece of writing a student produced. A remarkable number of adults with advanced degrees would stumble straight into the lie-lay pit today. Number 15. Punctuate the following passage correctly. The student received a block of text stripped of all its commas, semicolons, and quotation marks, and had to put every mark back in its proper place. This was harder than it sounds. Knowing when a comma separates items in a series, when it sets off a dependent clause, and when a semicolon should join two complete thoughts required real understanding of how a sentence was assembled. The semicolon alone defeats most adults now, deployed almost at random or avoided entirely. In 1955, a child was expected to know that a semicolon links two independent clauses that could each stand alone, and to place it without a second thought. There was a right answer and a wrong answer, and the teacher's red pen found every misplaced comma. Punctuation was treated as the traffic signals of language, and a student who ignored them wrote sentences that crashed. Number 14. Add these fractions and reduce to lowest terms: 3/4 plus 5/6 plus 2/3. No calculator. And here is the part that trips people up: no common denominator handed to you. The student had to find it. The least common denominator of 4, 6, and 3 is 12, so you convert each fraction, add the numerators, and reduce whatever monster you end up with. This was mental machinery that ran all day in a 1955 classroom, because fractions were everywhere in ordinary life, in recipes, in carpentry, in the price of goods sold by the pound and the peck. A generation raised on calculators often freezes at the sight of unlike denominators. Ask a random adult to add 3 fractions by hand and reduce the answer, and you will watch confidence drain from the room. For the 8th grader of 1955, this was a warm-up, dispatched in under a minute with a stubby pencil. Here is where it gets interesting, because now the arithmetic gets real. Number 13. Divide 4,896 by 24 without a calculator, showing your work. Long division, done by hand, was the beating heart of 1955 arithmetic, and students performed it constantly, laying out the neat scaffold of numbers, bringing digits down, estimating each step. The answer here is 204, but the point was never the answer. It was the method, the ability to break an intimidating problem into orderly steps and grind it to a clean result. Mental arithmetic was a matter of pride. Shopkeepers made change in their heads. Farmers calculated yields on the back of a feed sack. A child who could not divide by hand was considered unprepared for adult life because there was no machine coming to rescue them. Today, watch how quickly a grown adult reaches for a phone to divide two numbers that a 1955 8th grader would have knocked out on paper in the time it takes to find the calculator app. Number 12. A merchant buys a coat for $18 and sells it for $22.50. What is his percent of profit? This is profit and loss, and it was bread and butter arithmetic for a generation that expected to run farms, shops, and households. The profit is $4.50 on a cost of $18. $4.50 divided by 18 is 1/4, so the answer is 25%. Notice the exam does not ask for the dollar profit, which anyone can subtract. It asks for the percent of profit, forcing the student to understand that profit is measured against cost. Percentages governed real life, in interest, in markups, in taxes, in the discount tables printed in the backs of arithmetic books. An alarming number of adults today confuse percent of cost with percent of price, or cannot compute a straightforward percentage at all without a machine. The 1955 student did it on paper and moved on. Number 11. Find the simple interest on $400 at 6% for 3 years. Simple interest was a life skill in 1955, not an abstraction, because ordinary families borrowed for seed, for equipment, for the mortgage on a modest house. The formula lived in every student's head. Interest equals principal times rate times time. $400 times 6% is $24 a year. Multiply by 3 years, and the interest comes to $72. Simple, clean, and enormously practical. A farmer taking a loan to see him through to harvest needed to know exactly what that money would cost. Today, a startling share of adults cannot calculate the interest on a loan without a website doing it for them, which is part of why so many sign agreements they do not fully understand. The 1955 8th grader could work it out with a pencil before the banker finished his coffee. Now here is the wild part, because the next question involves units almost nobody alive today could handle. Number 10. How many square rods are in an acre? How many pecks in a bushel? The old measurement system was a thicket of units that a 1955 student navigated with ease, because these were the units of daily commerce. A rod is 16.5 feet. An acre contains 160 square rods. A bushel holds 4 pecks, and a peck holds 8 quarts. Grain was sold by the bushel, apples by the peck, land by the acre and the arad. Children learned these conversions cold, along with furlongs, gills, drams, and hundredweights. Ask a modern adult how many square rods are in an acre, and you will get a blank stare, because the rod has all but disappeared from daily life. Yet a farm kid in 1955 could tell you that a furlong is 40 rods, 1/8 of a mile, and that the whole tidy system fit together like gears. This knowledge was not trivia to them. It was how they measured the world. Number 9. Name the states that border your own and give the principal products of each. Geography in 1955 was demanding and specific. A student had to bound a state, naming every neighbor to the north, south, east, and west, and then go further, listing what each state grew, mined, or manufactured. This one produced wheat and cattle, that one coal and steel, another cotton and tobacco. And remember, in 1955 there were only 48 states. Alaska and Hawaii would not join the Union until 1959. So the map a student memorized looked different from ours. The expectation was total command of the country's shape and its economy. Today, surveys routinely find adults who cannot locate their own state on an unlabeled map, let alone name its neighbors and their products. The 1955 8th grader carried the entire nation in their head, its borders, its rivers, and the labor that filled its markets. Number 8. Give the capitals of these 10 states. State capitals were memorized cold, all 48 of them, and the exam simply picked 10 and expected instant recall. And the capitals were chosen to catch the careless student, because so many are not the largest or most famous city in the state. The capital of New York is not New York City, it is Albany. The capital of Illinois is not Chicago, it is Springfield. Not Los Angeles, but Sacramento. Not Miami, but Tallahassee. A 1955 student knew every one, drilled through recitation and map work until the answers were automatic. Test a room of modern adults on state capitals and watch the confidence collapse somewhere around the 10th state, especially the tricky ones tucked away from the big cities. This was considered basic knowledge for a 13-year-old, the kind of thing you were simply expected to have, the way you were expected to know your own address. Number 7, trace the course of the Mississippi River and name the longest river in the United States. Rivers were the highways of American history, and students traced them from source to mouth. The Mississippi rises at Lake Itasca in Minnesota and runs south, gathering the Missouri and the Ohio before emptying into the Gulf of Mexico below New Orleans. But the exam had a sting in its tail because it asked for the longest river, and the answer surprises almost everyone. It is not the Mississippi. It is the Missouri River, its longest tributary, stretching farther than the river it feeds. A 1955 student knew this the way they knew the alphabet. Geography was taught as the stage on which the nation's story unfolded, and a child was expected to know where the great rivers ran and why the cities grew where they did. Ask an adult today to name the longest river in America, and most will confidently give the wrong answer. Number 6. Define latitude and longitude and explain how they locate a point on the Earth. Here the geography turned mathematical. A student had to explain that latitude measures distance north and south of the equator, and longitude measures distance east and west of the prime meridian at Greenwich, and that together, the two lines pin any spot on the globe to an exact address. They understood that the equator sits at 0 degrees latitude, that the poles sit at 90, and that a degree could be divided into minutes and seconds for precision. This was the knowledge that let sailors cross oceans and pilots cross continents. Today, most people rely on a phone to tell them exactly where they are and could not explain the coordinate system that makes it work. The 1955 eighth grader could not only define latitude and longitude, but could use them, reading a point off a map with the confidence of a navigator. Number 5. Name the causes of the Revolutionary War and give the date the Constitution was written. History was taught with dates and causes, not vague impressions. A student was expected to explain why the colonies revolted, the taxation without representation, the quartering of soldiers, the restrictions on trade and self-government, and to fix the great events on a timeline. The Declaration of Independence, 1776. The Constitution, written at the convention in Philadelphia in 1787. The government it created, taking effect in 1789. These dates were not optional. They were the scaffolding of American citizenship, memorized so that a person understood the arc of the country they belonged to. Today, national surveys regularly find adults who cannot say which century the Revolution occurred in or what the Constitution actually does. The 1955 student could recite the causes in order and place every founding document on the calendar because their teachers believed a citizen who did not know the nation's history could not be trusted to guide its future. Number 4. Name the 3 branches of the federal government and explain what each one does. This is the question that quietly stumps highly educated adults today, and it should not. The federal government has 3 branches. The legislative, which is Congress, makes the laws. The executive, headed by the president, carries out the laws. The judicial, the courts, interprets the laws. And the genius of the design, which a 1955 student could explain, is the system of checks and balances, each branch holding power over the others so that none can dominate. The student also knew the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, ratified in 1791. This was the machinery of American self-government, and every 8th grader was expected to understand how it ran. Public surveys today find that a startling share of adults cannot name all 3 branches. In 1955, failing to know them would have been unthinkable for a 13-year-old about to become a voting citizen. Number 3. Explain how a bill becomes a law. Civics was not treated as background noise in 1955. It was the point of the whole education, preparing a child to participate in a democracy. So the student had to walk the entire path. A bill is introduced in Congress. It goes to committee, where it is studied, amended, and debated. It is voted on in one chamber, then sent to the other, where the process repeats. If both the House and the Senate pass it, and any differences are reconciled, it goes to the President, who signs it into law or vetoes it. And if he vetoes it, Congress can override that veto with a 2/3 vote in both chambers. A 1955 eighth grader could trace this entire journey from memory. Ask an adult today to explain how a bill becomes a law without humming a certain cartoon song, and many cannot get past the first step. The 1955 student understood the process because they were being raised to take part in it. Number 2, recite the opening of the Gettysburg Address and explain what 77 years ago means. Memorization of great American speeches was a cornerstone of the 1955 education, and the Gettysburg Address sat near the top of the list. Students learned its opening by heart, the solemn words Lincoln spoke over the battlefield in 1863. But the exam asked for more than recitation. It asked what 77 years ago actually means. A score is 20, 4 score is 80, plus 7 is 87. Count back 87 years from 1863, and you arrive at 1776, the birth of the nation in the Declaration of Independence. Lincoln was not being poetic for its own sake. He was tying the war directly to the founding promise that all men are created equal. A 1955 student understood the arithmetic hidden inside the eloquence. Most adults today can neither recite the passage nor decode the phrase, having never been asked to hold either in their memory. And now, the one that leaves modern adults completely blank. Number 1. Write the preamble to the Constitution from memory. This is the question that a 1955 farm kid could answer in his sleep, and that stops most adults cold today. Every eighth grader in America had committed the preamble to memory, those rolling opening words that begin with, "We, the people of the United States," and go on to lay out the 6 great purposes of the government to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity. Children recited it aloud together, the words echoing off the plaster walls, until they were as familiar as a prayer. It was not memorized as an empty exercise. It was memorized so that every citizen carried the founding purpose of their country in their own voice, ready to summon at will. Ask an adult today to write the preamble from memory, and most cannot manage the first line. Yet a 13-year-old in 1955 could produce the whole thing word for word in flowing cursive without a moment's hesitation. That was the standard. That was simply what an educated person was expected to know. So how would you do? 20 questions, no calculator, no spell check, no second guesses. Be honest with yourself in the comments and tell me how many you could have answered, because I suspect the number is humbling for all of us. Which one caught you off guard? The square rods, the lily trap, the longest river, or the preamble you once knew and somehow let slip away? These were not questions for scholars. They were the ordinary expectations placed on a 13-year-old about to step into adult life. Somewhere along the way, we traded a lot of this knowledge for machines that hold it for us. Maybe that is progress, and maybe something quiet was lost. Tell me what you think, and if this made you want to dust off your own memory, you know what to do.